Coffee Conversations with Inspiring Artists. It's live stream series which I started on May 30th when the lockdown started and the whole corona quarantine started. I started feeling that there is a lack of the natural conversations, natural rehearsals, natural movement. When we go and visit, we go each other, we rehearse, we share ideas, we just catch up, we meet each other for coffees and things like that. That all of a sudden was gone. So I felt quite lonely, and I felt that there is a lack of just natural movement and reconnection and connection with musician friends, artist friends, colleagues, peers, and so on. So I decided to create this online platform, which is called Coffee Conversations with Inspiring Artists, and go live every week, every weekend, Friday either or Saturday, and just talk to my friends, my colleagues, people who I look up to. So people who I see that they constantly bring in new ideas to this world, they constantly practicing, trying something new, pushing the boundaries between genres, getting better, and just developing ideas. I find it's very inspiring, something what brings content and quality to this world, and good message. So I decided to go live and invite these people for these conversations. So even it says Coffee Conversations with Inspiring Artists, and so far I've talked mostly, well, all of them were musicians. But it's not only for musicians, and it's not only for artists. It's basically for everyone who are trying to pursue something, trying to grow in their craft, trying to develop new ideas, and just pursue integrity in their daily life and manifest with their regular routine and practice what they're doing with their life, or whatever their profession is. So I think I kind of lost count, but I think today's guest is number 16, I want to say. I have to actually check that. And so I've talked to people from all over the world. Some of them were from my college, some of them from different projects we had together. And all these conversations were very informal, very fun, kind of chatting about life and music and current projects. So for those who are watching and maybe first time and haven't met me, although who is watching on my website, maybe Facebook page, artist page, maybe they already know me, but sometimes the guests bring in their own audience. So for those who don't know me, my name is Simona Smirnova. I'm originally from Lithuania, and I moved to the United States 8 years ago to pursue my musical dreams and career goals at Berklee in Boston. And then after I graduated and released my first album, I moved to New York. So that's where I'm currently at. I'm in New York, and I'm a jazz singer, composer, band leader, and conkless player. And apparently I'm kind of having my own podcast here. So, and I'm very, very happy to have all these people around me who are willing to share the ideas and share their music with me and with the world. So I would like to introduce my guest tonight. It's a pianist, organist, and composer and educator from Auckland, New Zealand. And Alan and I, we played 3 times so far. It's when I came to New Zealand for the first time in 2018 with CJC Creative Jazz Club. We played at Backbeat Club, and then I came back for 3 times in a row around the same time. And I would like to come back again this year, but I feel like that's probably not going to happen, at least in February. So for the beginning, I also want to share one photo. And so guys, just hang tight. And this is a photo. Can you see it? This is a really cute selfie we took on, I want to say March 10th, probably 2020. So just this year with Jonna and Cameron and Alan and myself after rehearsal at MAINZ. And we were rehearsing for our show at Anthology K Road show with CJC. So this is lovely to remember because that was actually my last normal performance pre-corona times. And now, since that's the only way we can reconnect. I'm using the advantage of internet and trying to reconnect this way. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest for tonight, Alan Brown. All right. Hi, Alan.
Hi,
Could
Simona.
you please briefly introduce yourself?
Right. It's great to be here. It's 1 o'clock in New Zealand, so and it's quite hot at the moment, so the temperature is really really nice. So yeah, I'm from Auckland, New Zealand. I've lived in Auckland all my life. Grew up basically on the other side of the city, and have lived since I got married over on the North Shore of Auckland. And I've been a musician for a long time. Although not so much in the professional realm, it was very much a hobby for a long time.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't know.
yeah, yeah. It was, I mean, just, through school and things, learning trumpet and piano. But the seeds were sown then, and I guess I moved into making music more of my income and my passion as I went on. And yeah, have been involved in education and tertiary education. I was at the school called MAINZ, which is Music and Audio Institute of New Zealand. I was there for 17 years. And just this year I moved to SAE, which is the School of Audio Engineering. And it's a different concept, but I'm really enjoying it. It's great.
Yeah, congratulations. That's a big change.
Yeah, big
That's
change. Yeah,
Yeah.
but a few of my colleagues from MAINZ, the tutors, went as well. So I'm back with a few of my mates, which is great.
Awesome. Awesome. So also, guys who are watching, feel free to write any comments or questions if you have in the chat box. Or just say hi that you're here, or if you're not in the US or New Zealand, you can say where you're from and what countries are watching. So it's always nice to see different time zones. I'm still fascinated by 18-hour difference between me and Alan, because it's Friday evening vibe here and it's totally Saturday afternoon in Auckland. So that's kind of funny. That's probably the biggest time difference possible. Is that right?
You can get a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're
All right.
in England. Yeah.
So, and at the end, we will hear Alan playing. So that's a bit of a treat for us. So hang on tight. Now, I would like to, well, I already see that Alan has all this huge like spaceship setup behind him. So, which gives us an idea that he's a piano or keyboard player and with a lot of experience. But I want to go back to the humble beginnings, to the very beginning of your musical journey. Could you share a little bit how you got acquainted with music, and what was your first instrument, and how did you get into it?
Okay. Well, I was fortunate to have been sort of born into a very musical family. I was the youngest of three siblings, and my parents were both very musical. So they were involved in opera. They did a lot of, especially light opera and things, but they were involved in a lot of shows and theatre, musical theatre, and various things. Some of the old Gilbert and Sullivan type stuff they used to do, Fiddler on the Roof and all that sort of thing. So I grew up surrounded by that. They used to have rehearsals in the lounge at home, and and both my brother and sister learnt piano ahead of me, and both my parents could play piano as well. So that was there's a lot of music going on. Of course, I didn't want to follow suit straight away. I actually, my first instrument was trumpet. So after pestering Dad at the age of, I don't know, about 8 or 9, I got a trumpet, and I loved the trumpet. I guess Herb Alpert was a big inspiration for me at the time. I really loved his tone and that sort of whole Latin American sort of vibe, and then through school, then I decided also I wanted to learn piano after a couple of years. Okay, I was learning trumpet. I want to learn piano now. So throughout school, I learned both, and yeah, took classical grades up to I think grade 8 trumpet. And but then when I left school, I was just focusing on piano, so the trumpet took a back seat. But strangely enough, this year, especially during lockdown, I started practicing the trumpet again. So it's coming back slowly. It's a very difficult instrument to, just get your embouchure right and get your control back. But I still love the trumpet.
Yeah, I saw some photos, actually pretty recent photos of yours with a trumpet.
Yeah. I did it was a video, like a clip of a piece of music I did live with the trumpet involved. So that was first for many years. But yeah, the keyboard. I think once I found that with the piano, I tended to start to want to write my own music and want to improvise. So that became a big thing for me post school. Is that I started to work with some bands, set up my own band for a while, and then eventually got in with a band that were doing quite well locally, and they were sort of a blues, the old R&B blues style. So that's where I learned a lot of improvising skills, especially around the blues, was playing with them.
That's what interests me a lot, because in terms of piano, a lot of people, there's very rarely you would hear a story that people like, oh, I picked up piano and I started playing, blues scale right away on the second lesson. That usually there is some sort of classical background in some way. So what I'm interested in is that pivotal moment when the student or, like a person who tries to learn the instrument, just kind of doesn't necessarily loses the interest in classical music, but like really gains interest in jazz and contemporary styles. Did you have the pivotal moment, kind of realization that jazz probably is that direction?
I can't recall a pivotal moment. I guess it was a sequence of events that happened for me. I found that with the piano, when I was a student, and I was a very bad classical piano student, because I would never be practicing what I should be practicing, much to the chagrin of my teacher. She was very patient with me, but I'm sure I exasperated her a lot. But I guess from growing up with the contemporary music of the time, and especially artists like Elton John and that were using piano in a very contemporary way, I really loved that. And I used to, as well as being able to read music, of course, from classical, I would do things like put on the Yellow Brick Road album on the turntable and tune it so I could actually play along in the key with it. And I had the written score of the whole album, so I'd play along with the album. And it wasn't just Elton John; there were other people that I did that with. I think even bands like Supertramp and all that sort of thing, which were a lot more classically, progressive around that time. And I started to hear things that weren't in the score, and started to pick up the nuances of how someone like Elton would play the backbeat on the piano and get that sense of groove happening. So then I started around that time actually making up my own tunes, and that's when I was a bad student, because I spent more time making up my own tunes than practicing what I should be practicing. And so as I sort of developed my, I guess, musical tastes and listening as well, they moved into bands like Steely Dan, into band groups, Pat Metheny group. They were big influences in me in getting into jazz and appreciating, or starting to develop an ear for it. And so I really sort of loved that. and even some of the Keith Jarrett, improvised concerts, solo concerts, like the Cologne concert and that sort of thing. Huge influence. And it wasn't until much later that I guess I was frustrated, and I thought I could never be a jazz pianist.
Really?
Because it seemed so far away for me. But I think someone gave me a Bill Evans CD, and it was, or album, it was Explorations, the Bill Evans trio. And I just had that on high repeat for a long time, and just decided, okay, I want to be able to do this. What do I do? So I started, there were no jazz schools back then. I set about just teaching myself, getting, books like the Mark Levine Jazz Piano Book and all that sort of thing. But there's a local teacher, a jazz player, Phil Broadhurst, who unfortunately passed away not long ago. And I approached him for some lessons, and I probably only had about half a dozen lessons with Phil, but he just put me on the right path. Okay, this is what you need to focus on, this is what you need to practice, and this is what you need to listen to, most importantly, like giving me heaps of cassette tapes, go and listen to this, go and listen to this, go and listen to this. And that was great, and that sort of it was a revelation. Oh, I can actually do this. I can, because I'm an improviser. It was just learning sort of the basics of the language, I guess, and then I was, okay, this is great, and then I was able to further explore, and the motivation was there to actually teach myself. I would spend as much time as I could, even bringing up small kids while they're sitting on the floor playing with the toys. I'll be practicing the keyboard or whatever. It was yeah.
So would you? Sorry.
Sorry. It's okay.
Okay, I interrupted. But I was just very curious to ask, and maybe you would share, because now there is all these schools and all these books and different method books, and there is extreme abundance of methodology in terms of jazz. Ebersold's, I feel like that's the older way, and now all these modern current books. And there's a lot of things people say, what is the most important thing in terms of learning jazz and improvisation. What would be your take on jazz? Like, what do you think? Is it memorizing the licks, or transcribing, or listening, or anything? What would you like to share?
Okay. I think listening is a big part of it, really, and it's active listening. It's not just having it on while you're doing something else. It's sitting down with albums and of players that you admire and really enjoy, and try and figure out what they're doing, what makes them tick. I remember doing that with Bill Evans, and actually hearing some things he'd play, and I, without necessarily going through the whole transcribing process, I would sort of try and figure out what that was, and then I thought, does that work? Why does that weird scale or sequence of notes work over that chord? And in classical theory, of course, it wouldn't. So then I started to do my own research and find out why that is. I still think listening is a big thing. I mean, there's some people say transcription is the best thing you can do. I probably think it's a good idea, but I don't think it's necessarily the highest priority. I think being able to listen and being able to then interpret what you were hearing through your own filter, through your own voice, through your own mechanism of, this is coming out like me rather than like the guy I transcribed. So there some of that can happen in transcriptions, that people learn these licks and learn how these players play, but then they don't necessarily go on, and they sound great, but then where are they? There's no I'm not hearing their voice coming through, and I mean that's possibly a fault of some of the education system. I don't know. I'm not saying it's purely transcription that's necessarily a fault, but to develop. And everyone goes on about developing your own voice, and I think it's not a secret. It's just like being true to yourself. What is it that inspires me? What do I get the most thrill out of in playing, and how I play? And for me, a lot of it is taking risks as well. I really like that idea of trying to get the self out of the way and think, okay, I'm just going to try this thing, and I don't know if it's going to work, and it could go somewhere else, and who cares? It's an experiment. I mean, that's what jazz is, an experiment. And then you can find your way back if it doesn't quite work out, and even on a gig, that's great. I mean, that what makes playing standards interesting for me is that where I can be a creative with it and take it somewhere else. That was the Miles quintet from the 60s with Herbie and Shorter and all those guys. That really, where they took things completely left of center. That was just that exploration, which I really, really loved. So yeah, listening.
Do you think that there's a certain point where like you have to study and imitate, and at some point you start looking for your own voice, or do you think that is the simultaneous process?
I think it should be a simultaneous thing. I don't think you should actively look for your own voice. I think it'll happen. If you don't try, you'll find that it's actually there. The trying is just trying to actually, I guess, get better at your craft, get better at being able to express those ideas in your head. So that's what you're hearing comes out in your playing. But that finding your voice is something that will happen naturally, and as I say, at the same time, as you're learning, hopefully.
Yeah, I just want to say we have some people watching and saying hi, so I just want to say hi back to Chris Melville. Do you know who's Chris?
Yes, I know Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hi, he says hi, and then we have I want to say correctly, Jacques McCullum.
Jacques.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah. He says, hi, Alan, the man himself. And we have Ruta from the US. That's from my end. She says she loves your t-shirt.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It is a good one. So guys, thank you so much for joining. And if you have more comments, or if you want to ask something, either ask Alan or ask me, or give a comment about coffee conversations, or share a picture of your coffee, go for it, or your story about music and path and calling. So Alan, I'm looking at your background, and as you said that it looks more complicated than mine. I just have 2 cups of coffee, actually not real ones, but the ones I designed. Could you tell us, I think that musicians especially, they would appreciate if you could tell us a little bit about what do you have in your studio, like synthesizers and what's there? Would you be willing to share a little bit?
Yeah, okay. Apart from being a musician, I'm also a complete geek. So, in terms of I'm a synth nerd, so synthesizers, I love synthesizers, and that's my other job as well, as I learnt to be an electronics technician. When I left school, I went to do electrical engineering because I didn't know what else I could do, and it wasn't really an option to go to music school back then, and my parents were very not keen on me doing anything with music as a career because they knew that you would never make money from it. So I went to do electrical engineering, hated it, left there, eventually came back when I got into radio work. I came back and did a electronics technician course. And so for many years, it's been part of my day job, has been doing electrical repair work, especially on keyboards and synthesizers. And it's only in the last few years that I sort of revisited that. I dropped down a day a week working and advertised myself to fix a lot of old retro gear. and so that's what I do as well, is I fix a lot of these keyboards. So I've got weird keyboards. That's not plugged at the moment, but the Fender Rhodes there. On top of that, you might hear it.
Yeah.
It's one of the Behringer Deep Mind synths. I really like that one. It's a fairly recent new analog one. On this side, I've got a couple of old Korg Trident. It's a very old analog retro late 70s synth. And then a Korg Lambda, which is a string synthesizer on top. Again, very ancient. Wurlitzer electric piano behind me. And then very old Roland SH-1000, one of the very first Roland monophonic synths they developed. So yeah, a bit of old gear, and right behind me over there is my workshop desk, where I do my repair work. So yeah,
That's really
actually,
cool.
you can probably, I'll change that camera, see if this is going to work. Oh yeah, so you can see some of the other, and right on top there is a little keyboard. It's running a Behringer Model D, which is like the Mini Moog sound, which yeah, it's very cool.
That is really cool. Wow, I'm always fascinated by people's studios, because it kind of is like the universe, and you are not in the main part of your house, so you kind of have a separate part where you go and you just go into Alan's world.
Totally. Man cave.
Yeah, I love that about musicians, because when they do something, they kind of in their own zone and they lose track of time, and it's just it's finding that downstream kind of synergy. It's so important in life, when you feel you lose track of time and you're just doing your own thing and you really enjoy it.
Yeah, totally.
Could you share a little bit about your current projects? Well, you shared a little bit at the beginning that you've been teaching for quite a while at MAINZ. Could you talk a little bit about your educational part? What courses did you teach at MAINZ, and now in the current institutions where you teach, and what do you feel being an educator brings to your life? What colors and aspects?
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, when I was a teacher at MAINZ, I was much more involved because it's a music performance course. So I was more involved in teaching, obviously, piano students or keyboard students. I taught music theory. I taught other things like even sound art, so experimental sonic art, the history of that. For the final year students, they had to create some piece of sound art, which was quite interesting. So we'll do the history right back to music concrete and all that sort of thing, through to the current sort of experimental approaches to music. So yeah, that was those sort of things were, and of course music performance and band performance I was teaching. They were great. It was really quite varied and quite. I really did enjoy a lot of that teaching. From that teaching, I think a lot of it was the rewards you see from someone who actually then starts applying the stuff, or starts to get these things and really gets interested in it. That's always a reward in itself, is when you see the light go on, and there's a spark of inspiration there, and that is the best reward in itself of any aspect of a teacher. At SAE, School of Audio Engineering, as I say, it's a different course. They have music production course, which I'm sort of teaching on, but it's more not a performance course. It's actually producing your own music using technology, which I'm interested in anyway, so it's fine. And then there's audio engineering bachelor, and then there's a bachelor of screen production, so there's a film school as well. But again, that's really varied, because some of the courses this year I've been teaching like a couple of combined courses, and one was what they call Zeitgeist, which was exploring, music, audio, and film of 60s, 70s, and 80s, and the students had to sort of pick a zeitgeist, to pick a time, and recontextualize it. And it was, of course, right at lockdown, so there was a recontextualizing happening right there. But there was a collaborative course, and if they could work together to create something. And exploring not just what the music was, but of course with the zeitgeist, it's what was happening, what caused that music, music was influencing as well. And then the other course I've been teaching as well was called Futurist Anarchist. So we looked at everything from the original Marinetti's Futurist Manifesto and the art movements, looking at futurism and through to things like Dada and Surrealism and Fluxus and all that sort of thing. And they had to do a combined group project, but they also had to, for their solo project, write a manifesto of their outline for what their project would be and create a project. And then I'd throw obstructions at them as well, sort of conceptual obstructions that they had to work within those sort of frameworks. So a lot of the courses are very, very project-based learning.
That's very wide range.
Yeah. Oh, it's great though. I enjoy the challenges of that. It's cool. And the latest course I've been teaching just for music production is a sort of world music course. So they've got but it's again understanding sort of cultural humility and competence in terms of how to, where this music comes from. Because they've actually got to produce a documentary on and interview someone, and so they've got to be well versed in understanding the culture behind where this other person's coming from. So it's good. I enjoy it. So it's I enjoy the teaching. I enjoy the interaction with the students. Zoom, of course, on the lockdown was really hard. It's hard to get that interaction, with a big class. They're just all sort of sometimes just black squares because they don't turn their videos on. So it can be quite difficult.
It's hard. I feel like teaching online sometimes I lose more energy than in person.
Totally. Yeah.
Because you have to augment your inspirational resources, whatever you have the energy to give them. It's you have to even give it more than usual. So it's hard.
I find it's quite tiring. But we're back on campus now, so it's good.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Yeah, it's everything like so scattered in here. So let's talk about New Zealand a little bit. So people see New Zealand as this, very mysterious land, and every time when I tell people that I go to New Zealand, and they're like, again, and what's up with you in New Zealand? I just really beyond the fact that my best friend lives in Auckland, of course, that's a big part of it. But I really found this country very special because I know it's a strong statement, and but it's kind of like a perfect land or perfect society, almost like utopian reality, because it's maybe it looks from the tourist perspective. I know, and it is a strong statement, but I lived in two different countries before. It's Lithuania, which is very sheltered and quite nice, small country, but with a harsh history of occupation. We were part of Soviet Union, and then now we're independent for 30 years. But it is quite sheltered and safe environment with people kind of in a similar range of income, and it's a very small. We like 2.5 million, so we very small. Right. And then US is like, I don't think I've ever seen so much poverty and crime on the streets as I see in New York, and it's just heartbreaking sometimes. But plus, I see so much. Wealth and so many it's just like the diversity of everything. So in contrast to that, when I come to When I came to Wellington for the first time, I'm like, this is the cutest city ever. You know, it's just everything is so pretty and everyone is so nice and everyone's giving me a hug when they say hi. You know, it's just like, it's a very lovely country. And Kiwis are really, really nice people. Like, it's kind of, it is a thing. It is the thing. And as far as I've met and collaborated with, everyone was nice. So could you tell me, well, you totally know about New Zealand because you were born there and you know everything about Auckland. How does it feel to be a musician in relatively small country and relatively far from, other lands?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't have a lot to compare it to because I haven't been a musician in any other country. So, but from talking to people like yourself and what I hear online, um, I think we're quite unique in the size that we are, both good and bad. The good part is that everyone knows everyone, because as a musician, everyone, yeah, it's not 2 degrees, it's 1 degree of separation. Everyone knows everyone else, and so if you want a musician to work on your project, it's like, oh, yeah, this one, or yeah, yep, it's easy to find people that you can work with, and there's a lot of really, really good musicians out there, in Auckland and Wellington and around the country. But from experience, yeah, the Auckland scene from the point of view of musicians is really, really good. I guess the difficulty is that being the size we are, and unlike Wellington, Auckland doesn't really have a central sort of creative area that a lot happens. In Wellington, you just walk down Courtney Place and everything's happening. We're so spread out. It's a little bit diverse from that point of view. So there's not a lot of good venue locations, and the venues are very spread out. You've got to make a point to go and see a band or something, and there aren't a lot of them. A lot of the bigger venues have all closed down, so there's a few smaller ones. But if you're wanting a big band venue, there's only a few places that you can really do something well. And I mean, they're good venues. There's some really good venues that are around that are coping with the bigger sort of crowd that you might want from a band. But it is a struggle. I think it's a lot of musicians find it very hard to get the work they'd like to get. It depends on what you're doing, I guess. As an original, if you're doing original music, that can be quite difficult. You've got to really work hard, but some people are doing that really well. Examples like Troy Kingy and artists like that really, really doing great. And you see bands like 660 that are huge in New Zealand. But yeah, they work really hard to get there. And I guess it's the same for you guys. You've really, I mean, you may have more opportunities for venues or gigs, but you've got 10 times as many people trying to get those same gigs. So I don't know if it's necessarily any different. I think it's just sort of in terms of numbers that, the experience is different. We don't have as many venues and don't have as many people, but it's still hard to get the gigs,
Yeah, I think that there's never like a perfect place for musicians or perfect school for musicians or perfect path or circumstances. It's always any path which is kind of based on integrity and kind of authenticity. It has its own struggles, and it doesn't really matter. And I really like the school. Sometimes I laugh, like you can go to the best school and to the worst school, and it really doesn't matter, because like it's all about what you want to do and how you are able to take on the information, and kind of utilize it and use it. You can have like the least amount of like one book with harmony and like really nail it down, or you can have all the PDFs and downloads ever and you kind of sitting and not doing really anything with it. So it's really I think there's always within the artist path there's always a challenge.
Yes.
In one way or the other. And I think that it changes, like when I think about like my own I think it waves. Like, I feel like at this point, I really enjoy New York in terms of, you know, fighting. And there's this what is this called? The adrenaline, you know, to get the gig,
Mm.
to get the better gig, play with better, you know, musicians, do this, do that, get that grant, you know, is this adrenaline. But I also feel like it's waving. Sometimes I feel like I want to go into my own shelf and I want to go back to
Right.
Lithuania. That's when I started writing Joan of Arc. I just went back to Lithuania, to my hometown, which is like 5,000 people population and one restaurant. You know, that's where I grew up. So, and then it was great, you know, so
Mm.
that was
Mm.
great for me to compose. And I
Mm.
feel like it always, it's different. It depends on life stage and what we're looking for. So it's always a
Yeah.
struggle and a joy at the same time.
True. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love New Zealand. I love New Zealand, and I'll be back every year after Corona.
Okay.
New Zealand will
We'll
not
make
get
sure
rid
you
of
are.
Simona. Oh my goodness. So back again, one more stamp.
Do
So,
it.
Alan, would you be willing to share a piece, a musical piece on your keyboards, and maybe tell a little bit something about it?
Yeah, for sure. So, besides jazz, I guess my other passion is electronic music, and specifically around the ambient, more ambient sort of um, realm. And I did a couple of albums of sort of solo piano pieces that I improvised in the local town hall a few years back. So that sort of thing, I've always been inspired by, you know, growing up, even before the jazz thing, artists like Brian Eno and, you know, um, Robert Fripp and David Sylvian and all those really sort of quite creative composers. And it sort of, and you know, even people like Harold Budd, who that very sort of ambient piano, um, basically passion with that going back to even like Eric Satie and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm always I've been quite involved with ambient and soundscapes and textures and things, and this is really um, a big passion of mine. And actually, at the moment, I'm looking at generative music, so using the ideas of something being generated by a musical algorithm, and then actually playing or improvising to that. So you're actually setting up a live performance with some generative aspects, which I'm really fascinated with. So I'm doing a bit of research on that at the moment, and we'll see that where that takes me. But this piece, it's a sort of combination. I went the idea of sort of the jazz and the electronica, and it's an older, not that old. It's a piece called Tone Poem, and I haven't actually recorded it anywhere, but I've played a few versions of it. So I did a version with Jono and a couple of other people that are at the CJC, and that was more of a sort of drum and bassy type version, but it was, you know, improvised. Then I've done a very sparse solo piano version, and with the other band Alargo, with the trumpet player Kingsley Maluish, we do a lot of, again, that sort of very textural, cinematic soundscape stuff. And we've had done yet another version, and this is a different version altogether. So this is called Tone Poem, and I'll turn this up, see if we can get this working. Can you hear that?
Yep, let's hear it.
Okay, here we go. I've got to change my camera.
Oh yeah,
so you can
my favorite
see what I'm actually doing. There we go. Hopefully you can see with that. Okay.
Wow, awesome.
Thank you.
So beautiful, Alan. I never heard this side of your, musician side.
Ah,
So,
okay.
yeah, that's so, because I've heard you as jazz pianist and organist, but I never
Yeah.
heard this. So this is beautiful. Wow, I love it.
Oh, cheers. Thank you.
And I feel like it's a treat because you said it wasn't recorded before. So
Yeah, this is the first sort of online version.
yeah, wow. So guys who are watching, you guys are fortunate here for a treat for first time hearing the piece. Thank you so much, Alan. It's so great catching up with you and chatting about everything, about, I don't know, life, New Zealand, education, piano.
Yeah, we covered quite a lot.
Excuse
great.
me?
We covered quite a lot, so yeah.
Yes, we did. It's so good to see you. I'm glad you're doing well, and I love your piece, and I love that we, even though we cannot travel, we have this, and this is, I feel it's quite wonderful that we can, from different parts of the world in different time zones, we can just chat like that and share the chat with other people. So I think that's awesome.
That's great.
So thank you so much. And guys, this video will go on YouTube in probably like half an hour from now, and you can watch it. Please join us for coffee conversations with inspiring artists next week on Saturday, and I'm going live every weekend mostly, and I don't know how long. I'm gonna probably until quarantine is over, I'll be doing this. And once it's over, I'll be too busy running around the world. So no.
Coming to New Zealand.
Coming to New Zealand, that's right. Yeah. So looking forward to playing with you again, and looking forward to hearing all your upcoming projects, Alan. Thank you so much for giving time and sharing music and your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Simona.
Thank you. I'll do a little screenshot. Hold on. Smile. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Alan. This was Alan from Auckland, New Zealand, Simona in New York, and Coffee Conversations with Inspiring Artists. See you guys next time. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.